So the CFO approves the project in principle, but wants the CIO to confirm what they're thinking might be a good idea and a good use of resources or conflict with the project that's already underway. So they're probably going to ask you some of these questions that are going to come up as part of the follow-up after you do your pitch, asking you things like, why hasn't this been suggested by IT before? We're too busy. There's no budget. What would you normally say to things like that, Dean?
Well, first of all, you have to evaluate and really understand the relationship between the CIO and the CFO. You really have to understand the organizational constructs and the relationships that are involved before you make the pitch. When you hear from the CFO, well, why don't you talk to technology and say they can support this? That's a whole different pitch you have to make, and that could be a whole different podcast or segment that we do here.
We may.
But
Sure.
at the end of the day is, understand, the objections you're gonna get are, this is an improved technology, who's gonna support this? Maybe it is complex, maybe it's not. In the case of our sponsors, it's not very complex. It's really user own, but those are some of the hurdles you have to jump over when you have to
Sure.
get the IT organization involved, in addition to who's your funding source, the CFO. Um, and there's different ways you can handle this, right? If you see that as the case, has a strong relationship there, and the CIO has say on whether or not you're going to get funding for something you want to do, then you got to get involved early and get them on board. What I like to do if I see that relationship exist, I like to go to the CIO's organization and make it sound like their idea, help them make a pitch to the CFO with me, right?
Right.
Give them the
Right.
credit for something you're trying to achieve. So that's one of the strategies that I deal with, that I employ when I'm dealing with an IT organization that has a lot of power and a lot of say in what the future design of any technological solution is going to be within the organization, including finance.
And the other thing I found works very well too is it's not a superly different conversation to have with the IT organization, but if you start on the premise of how much something costs and this is the benefit we're going to do if we make a change, the numbers and the money essentially bully, which is kind of not a great word, but essentially bullies any pet project somebody's got going on that you can make work better, or it trumps any resistance they may have because it's very hard to argue with money.
Right. I mean, when you talk about pet projects, that's an interesting concept. I mean, pet projects there's kind of two forms that I see. One of them is, it's called a stealth project, where somebody does something without telling anybody, and where you go to IT and saying, this is a great idea. I do have some support with other leaders in finance, including the CFO. And they say, well, we don't have the resources and it's under budget, so go do it on your own. So one is kind of an approved pet project, and the other one is a stealth pet project instead of getting IT support and approval.
I like the word pilot. A lot of sins are forgiven on the word pilot because it's a small amount of money. The vendors, frankly, giving you a whole bunch of resources if they're any good,
Yeah.
including the consulting, free use of software, server space, whatever. The less impact it has on the company, the easier it is to get that pilot done. And then if that's successful, along with the money story, going to the IT organization, it just paves the way for you to get the success you're looking for. And what you're going to want to do with those IT folks is say, okay, what you have going on is important because it is important. How do we get this to work together so we can run a parallel path? Because what I have is worth a ton of money in terms of savings, and what you have is very strategic, but it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
What can we do now? And I think a win-win on that is a great way to do it. I think you're right. Rapid analytics is the fastest path to an AI reporting resume trophy that gets you the skills you need to advance your career, compensation, and not get outsourced. Rapid analytics costs 44 times less than a full-time equivalent and has a 39-hour ROI. It's also delivered risk-free because we'll set it up and allow for free use of the software during the pilot, so you only pay if it works. Get Rapid Analytics or quit and find a company that has Rapid Analytics so you can achieve your full potential, get paid for it, and stay relevant in a changing world. And Curtin Advisory. Curtin Advisory is especially relevant to companies that are listening because he's got both the technical and financial skill set in order to be relevant to a world where you're going to apply resources like technology and financial skills together. Dean's a CPA. He spent time in the Big Four. He's worked at all the major consulting and software companies, so there's no better person available who can get you where you need to be efficiently. So after you contacted the CIO and asked for 15 minutes based on the CFO asking you to see them, how can you be properly prepared? What if your CIO already has an AI or data project or any kind of other consulting project going on that is perceived as competition to what you're bringing up? What would be the value prop to get them to be a little bit more open-minded?
Well, with all the emerging technologies that are going on right now, why eliminate new technology and ideas and new ways of doing things and isolate them based because you're invested in one. I mean, you see how quick technology is changing these days, right? The best way to
Yeah.
do this is through these emerging up and coming technology companies are gonna invest the time and they're gonna show you what their technology does and how it's gonna help you, right? And it's always free. You go to the big well established ones with the older technology, they're not going to want to do pilots, and they're not going to, if you do, you're going to pay for them. So take advantage of what some of these up and coming technologies are. Kind of evaluate what if you're the CIO, evaluate what you're doing today, but always look
Mhm.
at what's going to be the next thing, the next generation of what you're trying to achieve today, and take advantage of the fact that these companies will come out and they'll try to prove themselves harder for free.
And they'll earn it. And wouldn't you want to work with somebody who really wants the job and has proven to you the capability of doing it? Because the pilot is a day in the life or a week in the life or a workflow day in the life of proof that this new technology will actually work. So you'll know it works before you actually buy it if you go with an up and coming vendor.
Absolutely. And AI is getting so overhyped right now. I mean, I think most people don't really understand what it is. But when you come to the pilot and you bring vendors in and you bring a practical use case that you're trying to achieve and you say, let me see what your software does, that's important. That's real.
And too, I'll tell you, that works really nicely with CIOs who may have a preconceived idea of what they're going to do because they use the vendor forever. If you walk in and say, hey, we did the pilot, it works, it costs this much to do that work process, we could save this much money, it's an X number change and difference. The proof is so heavy and the cost savings is so heavy, it's very
Absolutely.
hard to say, so hard to say no to you at that point. But you can't be arrogant about that. You have to also say to the CIO, I know what you're doing is really important too. And this may be perceived as a point solution, but honestly, the dollar value of the savings makes it worth it. Let's incorporate it with what you're doing, but I need to have the ability to charge forward right ahead from here. Just so you know, Dean, I'm going to put a link on the page here. We're going to put a link in there where there's a number of anticipated CIO and IT objections in terms of responses, so you can think about it before you go in there and get floored by somebody who's way more adept at this than you. Because a lot of people asking for project money, they only do it once in a while. They don't have a lot of experience. So we're going to provide you with some of the insights we've developed over many years. As we said in the beginning, what we're looking to do is frame proposals as business opportunities, not asking for money, which I assume you could help with, right, Dean? Because a lot of folks, they have a need for getting a project across the line, but they're really not adept at that process we just described, even though they're very senior people.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I'm excited about some of the new technology that's coming out. Some of the young vendors that are coming up, doing things differently,
Hmm.
bringing down the cost of relationships for any vendor. They're nimble. They're trying to do new things. They're constantly investing in their platforms. And I'd like to, if I get engaged to help somebody like we're talking about the profile we're talking about today, make a more comprehensive, more valid proposal to get money, and then help share ideas without them having to do a bunch of research on their own and learn something
Sure.
they don't do day to day. I'm that resource that you can call out to, and then that's what I do. So,
And the other thing too, for everybody tuning in, Dean isn't going to have the meter running just as soon as you make the call to him. He's going to work with you a little bit, tell you what things cost, give you some insights, probably for free because he's that kind of guy. But at the end of the day, it's the means to get to where you want to be, and it's not that hard. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share this with people you know, and feel free to contact Dean or I for help on your next pitch. Your future depends on it.
Thanks, Jim, for including me in this webcast. I think this is a really important topic, and if I can help any organizations, you have my contact information through this webcast, and thanks for including me. I look forward to the next one we do.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean. Bye bye.